Hello! Welcome one and all. Welcome to my stream. I am PaladinAshe here to stream for you again, and today we're going to play more Satisfactory as per usual because, well, that's just gotten easy. The week's looking like it's going to be me taking time off from streaming to do certain other things. Part of that is looking to see if I can't beef up my graphic design aspect of things. As you probably can tell, most of the shit I've been working with is either just like wholesale, obviously an AI generated image or what have you, or it's like something that I've touched up a bit but was originally AI. And I'd like to do something a little bit more than what I've got, but we'll have to see. Either way, let's get into it. Let me start up the game. See, Satisfactory. Ugh. There we go. Yes, this game is satisfactory, and it is satisfactory. Also, hey, EA. Wait, is this the right load? Yeah, come dumpster land. Okay. What was I gonna do last time? Probably break into the oil baron community. Let's see. Production, oil extractor. I need cables. I need engines, and I need butter. Ah. Watching the new death battle between Dante and Clive. How's that going? It is indeed a thing now. That reminds me. This is currently working, but I wonder. Oh, I forgot. I have a feeling Dante will win purely because, like, well, one, Dante is pretty busted, but two, because versus battle has a tendency to favor certain characters over much. Where is one of you's got a summer sloop? I should turn these into. Sure. Spoil away. He's the guy from Final Fantasy 16. Which gives him an immediate boost of power because if memory serves, yeah, I want to say so. I want to say he's the one who turns into Ifrit. Which, you know, oh damn. Kind of surprised there. Okay, one of you has my summer sloop, or something has my summer sloop on it. Not this. I mean, Clive is pretty busted, all things considered. Like, we are talking a guy who is essentially turning into a god of fire within the context of the Final Fantasy setting, and it is a high fantasy setting. At the same time, I also acknowledge that Dante has done some shit in the past, some wild shit. Actually, I know exactly where my summer sloop is. Yeah. Those Sephiroth's also annoyingly powerful. That's where my summer sloop is. Let's see. Just one. Okay, so I've got 15. These are both pipes. 45. Actually 60 now. This would consume 15. Okay. I can get back to making my butter. I had to turn it off because my beams were being consumed by that. The thing about Sephiroth is that he basically nearly ended the world. Nearly truly became a god that could consume the world and then move on to other worlds and consume them. I think you could almost argue that, at least in the case of say Dante, Devil May Cry, it remains largely local to Earth and doesn't become a galactic threat. So that draws the question with Clive. Let's see. That's making... I have to wonder what Bo's response on the subject would be, because I haven't played Final Fantasy 16, and while he himself hasn't played it either, he has basically become somewhat obsessed with the story. It's one of his more enjoyed Final Fantasy stories. Okay. We're off to make the oil, the wonderful oil of Oz. Yeah, that one's kind of asinine because I'm sorry, it's a fair fight. What were you expecting? Deku does some bullshit, and literally the only reason Miles is doing anything even close to that now is because I feel like Marvel desperately doesn't know what to do with him. Which is not unique to him. Just take a look at fucking MJ. Spends all her time basically doing stuff in the background and Marvel's trying desperately to make it look like she is more than just like fucking you know, Peter's former fuck buddy. That's unfair. Former wife.
If I had a body, it would be a temple.
You have no body?
I don't think we're on the same line here.
You see lines where there are curves, shallows where there are depths, consume our blood.
Where's my scanner?
I will continue gathering data, I suppose.
I think most people would prefer. Okay, EA, I'm gonna blow your mind. It's because he beat Miles Morales in the fucking in the versus battle, and people made a meme out of him defeating street levels. But yeah, like in the case of like, you know, like I think most people like Black Cat honestly more than they like MJ, and I don't judge that because I don't care for MJ. The only problem with Felicia is that like she's kind of like in the category of wanting about the same thing that MJ always wanted out of Peter, which is that MJ only ever wanted Peter, but Peter is both Peter and Spider-Man. And Felicia mostly wanted Spider-Man. That's not to say that she didn't care for Peter, it's just she had like a preference on how she felt he should live his life. Oh yeah, the pheromone mating girl. I don't even mentally include her because like she seems so like flash in the pan as a concept that like it's like, oh, she's there, but like, is she really there? Or is she just there to introduce her for like her own like comic book line and like occasional like dramatic unresolved sexual attention? Ah! Yeah, that's fair. It's not help that like I feel like mind control, and let's be honest. Pheromone stuff is basically just mind control with like hand waving. It's like, oh, they're destined to be together because they're basically like fated mates or some shit like that. It radiates the energy of like some of those like romantasy novels with vampires. Right, this island got so much shit on it. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Ow! Ow! Fuck you. Yeah. Like that begins to feel like some of that that Omegaverse shit. Like whatever, if that's what you're into. hate these things. Ah! Fuck you. I'm about to die. Go away. Ugh. I forgot how annoying this place is to get a handle on from the start. I'm not placing my train depot right there this time. I did that before, and it was a hurdle of annoyance. Fuck you. Huh, stealth war bond. Which means we're gonna have a bunch of like missions that emphasize the stealth as being a useful method of doing things. Reminds me of how my buddy Peter, he's one of the guys who shows up for our Saturday streams. He has this friend. I think it's more like a roommate, but friend. So like, I need to preface this. I never played Helldivers 1. But, Bo and those guys did. At the time that, like, Helldivers 1 was a thing. Yo. Like, it is still a thing, but at the time that it was, like, kind of new. I think I was playing Valhalla. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I was also new in a job. And kind of just, like, exhausted by day's end and kind of just, like, socialized out. I didn't want to play anything like cooperative, especially midweek. And so I was playing, that. And shit you not, if I had played Helldivers, they probably would have played it longer. And it's not for, like, because I'm such egregiously nice, fucking company. It is quite literally, get this, because Peter's buddy made it unfun to play. Like, he was one of those people who would not let them, like, he would essentially whine at them if they, like, played the game in any way that wasn't optimal. Like, when I say optimal, I mean, like, the optimal way to play this game is to be stealthy, stealth past them. But we want to go shoot those monsters. Stealth. You need to stealth. Suffice to say, they did not play that game for a very long time. Maybe like a couple weeks and then put it down. Hey Chonka, how are you? I'm doing well myself. I met up with my my sister and my mother for brunch this morning. Down island in an area called Parksville. And then I stopped off in this one area that's like more of like it's kind of like a side trip from like the main highway. It's called Coombs. And I'm not sure if I'd say it's like an art community or anything like that. It's got like a bunch of hippie shops, but like one of the things it's got is called the Coombs General Store, Goats on a Roof. Literally called as such because it's got like a grass like obstacle course thing on its roof, and that they sometimes have goats let out onto. But it's like a general store with like a bit of everything. Food, groceries, a little cafe, fucking dishes, kitchenware, toys, art stuff. I wound up buying some stoneware. They had these like Japanese bowls and a painted clay bowl, and I ended up buying those. See, I'm doing fine. I'm happy because later tonight, me and Pickle are going to watch Girls und Panzer on the Discord server tonight. That's cool. This weekend's a good time since, like, Bo canceled all the watch-alongs that we usually have. I might just vibe tonight. So if I show up, you know, I show up. If I don't, I don't. Don't wait for me. Let's see. Okay, now that everything is basically out of the way. Organization. Do I don't have the blueprints yet. Fuck. Guess I'm gonna have to do this by hand. Foundation. I'm gonna have to get rid of this. I don't have any space for it. Let's slot these berries in here. There we go. I always love when it's like basic. Man, I want to. I need more Mercer orbs. Those purple orbs that I've been finding around. Those are for storage. And for researching storage. Boosh, boosh, boosh. Ah, no. Ow. Fuck you. Where did it go? Get out of my bags. It is going well. Hope it's going well for you too, Val. Okay, I can't do anything real special right now. So I'm going to... Hey, Sabrina Smith. Having a good day too? Yourself? No. I don't want to have to go back for all that stuff. Fuck. I suppose I'm gonna have to go back. I do need more concrete, but I'm going to place that down there as a basic. This is where my power is probably going to connect into and branch from. Where is it? Ah, no, no, no. Okay.
Witness a single strand of the tapestry.
Sweet.
You no longer perform in your maker temple?
Helping
I stream mostly midweek, with a little bit of weekend
I
stuff.
have no use for blood.
I sometimes change around my schedule, but currently these days it's 2 p.m.s on or 2 p.m. Pacific. You know, from like generally about Tuesday onward to about Sunday. Sometimes Wednesday onward till Sunday. I post my schedule, but like currently I'm reaching the end of mine, and because I recently hit affiliate, I'm going to be probably taking a week off to sort out some stuff. I don't have healing stuff, so I'm gonna give that a pass for a bit. I'm a variety streamer. Currently, I've been mainlining Satisfactory, but I tend to play things that change over time. So sometimes it's you know, something new that month. It's something I dredged out of my Steam library. On Saturdays, I typically play with another streamer, Marshall underscore Bohemond, and a couple of friends, and we generally play some like friend co-op game. Like currently, we're playing Species Unknown, which is kind of a horror co-op where you try to avoid getting gobbled by a monster, kind of Phasma-ish. It's pretty fun. There we are. Oh, you know what? I'll put one down. I need frames. Okay. Ah. Sure. Ask away. Can't guarantee I'll give a yes answer or you know, positive, but you can ask me something. Okay. I'm gonna take... at present, I'm not shopping around to look at any graphic design or portfolios. Okay. What's my foundation? Concrete. No thank you. I appreciate the offer, though. I've got that stuff does not stack well in the inventory. Yeah, my apologies, but best of luck, in your pursuits of commissions. You too. Okay. Ugh. Sippy. Let's power. Oh. Oh, right. My max consumption is getting kind of high. First, I'm going to come over here. Okay, I need more cables and frameworks. Let's see. There we go. While we're here, because I kind of need a bunch of it real quick. Let's get those frameworks, though. But yeah, I'm currently in book 3 of the Ascendance of a Bookworm Part 3 story, and it's kind of hilarious because it's starting to get to that point where the story starts to take into account that as capable as Mine, the main character, is at like introducing different ideas, her lack of common sense for the world is starting to kind of chafe against her capabilities. Like, she has a carpenter approach her. The dude's basically done work for her before. He's essentially working on her attempts at creating the printing press right now. But the problem is that she recently gave an order to like the actual guild for carpenters. And this has caused the guild to question if he's even capable of being patroned by a noble. And because he's a youngish man running a shop, he's considered too much of a greenhorn and not respected. So he's like, so do you have a problem with my work? And it's just like, no. Your work's excellent. I absolutely approve of it. And he's like, oh, okay, that's good. Then why that? And just like, I apologize. I'm somewhat new to the world of business and wasn't aware of the way things work, because in their world, even if you have a desire for expediency in a job, generally speaking, you don't spread out the work to multiple workshops. You work with one group and one group only. And spreading it out is basically a mark against the initial. And like, it's funny because like her main contact with the merchant world, Benno, and his like personal attaché Mark, just kind of like give her a look like, yeah, but you should know it now because you've been working with them for a year.
Milestone reached. Blueprints reduce repetitive building tasks, further optimizing your progression towards saving Earth.
Okay.
Beautiful ecosystems, abundant natural resources, and sunsets over frolicking puppies and kittens. The blueprint design allows you to build and combine structures once and then duplicate that configuration effortlessly. Any complaints about the spatial restrictions will only reveal your own inefficiencies.
Yeah, as a point of fact, like the book before had like a major, like, shall we say, turning point in the story. Be that she kind of has like an argument with okay, so she started in an orphanage, a monastery outside of a city called Ashe. Now, the reason she did this was at the behest of her adoptive dad, the Archduke, who basically wants her to spread printing all across the duchy. And that's all to the good. But the thing is, he was kind of like pressing them to go fast. So she was making some decisions kind of impromptu with all of her knowledge from like working and being in the temple. And the problem is, you cannot compare the temple orphanage to any other orphanage in the world, because people who enter the temple orphanage, are either via willing, which is rare, or by being donated as a child, will wind up there for the rest of their life. They will never go up in position. They will never go down in position. Their needs will be met within a certain amount of reason via the hierarchy of the temple, but everything else is like, non-essential. So they get clothes, but they won't be fancy clothes. They get a roof over their head, but it's likely that the amount of firewood she didn't. Her only experiences with like orphanages in this world are entirely the temple. And that's kind of the thing, is that like, I don't fault her entirely because a lot of people just don't spell shit out for her. They don't give her the reasons for things. So they kind of just let them play out. But, what's that? Power Tower plus Foundation. They don't give her the reasons for things. And it almost kind of does set her up to fail. But at the same time, in a lot of cases, it's because the people in that world treat it as like their own personal common sense. They kind of just assume she'll know. Even if she was like a denizen of that world, she's sickly and has never left the city. So it's kind of amusing. But basically, she run aground of some issues with Hase. Because they go to Hase and proceed to, like, be like, okay, we're taking these orphans off your hands. And the mayor of Hase is kind of, like, unable to refuse them. Because first and foremost, these are blue priests from the temple. And one of them is, I think, knowingly either the new high bishop or like the daughter of the archduke. And though they do not live in the city and know the totality of what it is to interact with a noble of that rank, they know that a noble of that rank can do whatever they fucking want. So she's like basically saying, I'm going to do a thing with the without really knowing that the background unspoken part is, and there's nothing you can do about it to stop me. Now, this guy was doing some sketch stuff, but it was not, shall we say, sketch within the context of their world. Power connection transmission. Let's call this. Okay, and we'll call this infrastructure. And we'll change the icon. Apply. Apply. Save. No. No. Yeah, so it's like, she's basically going around only passingly aware in some cases of like her capabilities. And it winds up, creating this whole situation where this dude basically, was doing some sketch stuff. He was basically like going to sell two of the orphan girls out of the orphanage. And their brothers were pissed off about this. And they kind of mutually agreed to go into the temple to avoid being sold. But like later on, this causes these guys to attack the orphanage. But the thing is, they couldn't because it's enchanted with defenses. So literally they couldn't even approach it. Like they attempted to open the door and it wouldn't allow them to open it because they had malicious intent. And they couldn't even attack the door because it would repel them. But like, after this, like, Ferdinand's all like, well, this is a good learning moment. You get to learn how to deal with this guy. I want you to create a faction to isolate this dude and kill him. And she's like, what? All he did was attack a building. And like, she doesn't realize why that's kind of a big deal. So, like, as far as she sees, it's like this major overcorrect. And she gets this, like, basically order to do, like, essentially, a political intrigue. And she's like, but I don't want to do a political intrigue. I've never done a political intrigue. And he's like, this is the first time for everything. I could teach you. And gets this, like, smile on his face that causes her to have, like, nightmares for days and not sleep at all. And during this time, she proceeds to chew out her adoptive brother, who's like her age, but a year younger, and a brat. And like, as a result of that, she like eventually like has like a talk with Benno and Lutz, who proceed to both tell her she's being kind of stupid about this. And they kind of explain the sort of background aspects of this, which is that the building they created, because it's a white buildings are explicitly made with magic and are marked by their color as like the property of the Archduke. Attacking this is marked as treason. And it is justificational grounds for having an entire city razed to the ground. And essentially, while what she's she's been asked to do does involve her being asked to deal with the dude in a potentially lethal fashion, what Ferdinand was not saying to her openly, and he himself was neglecting to acknowledge that this as like a thing that he should specify, was that he was giving her the opportunity to do damage control for this city and save it. Because it's just like a random city as far as he's concerned with respect to like, like as a noble. And he don't care if it lives or dies, but she does. So it's like a whole thing. And she's like having to have this explained to her. So she goes to him and she's like, I have been told that I go about with the common sense or with a mishmash of the common sense of a commoner, a merchant, and a temple maiden, and now a noble. But I've never really been either of those things. I'm walking around with the common sense of my life before. And even Ferdinand's like, come again? And then like, she's like, I've never lived this life before. And he's like, I thought you were a noble in the previous life. And you're just like, no, I am not a noble. I specified that I'm not a noble. I have never been a noble. And he's like, but what about that life that you were living before? Like, it was so cushy. And it's just like, my country had its hierarchies, but they were not that rigid. I was just another person like anybody else. And he was just like, oh, shit. I didn't parse that, so like, I understand where your confusion's coming from. So maybe I need to also like sort out my expectations a bit. You know, so basically like, she's starting to run astray of a lot of her like difficulties surrounding like people assuming too much about what she knows based off of their own preconceptions about what they know about her. And in her case, she's running astray of that because she herself is prone to kind of just like making assumptions based off of like her preconceptions. Okay, I can't place that very far. Fine. I am not going to place that there just yet. Honestly, I'm kind of glad the kids from Ashe are bit characters, though. I do not like them. Like, it's kind of funny because you kind of get used to, like, these very isekai, like... It's not even isekai. You get used to these, like, characters in anime who are, shall we say, very precociously intelligent. And, like, you see it in stuff like, Bo could tell you a lot about Kennies in kaiju flicks, which are basically like young children who have an untoward connection with like, with a kaiju, say Gamera. And because of these connections, they wind up being given like all number of like positions to like facilitate their capabilities in communicating with that kaiju. And then, like, you get these characters who are, like, tangential to them, who are basically literally just children. Like mine's adoptive brother, Wilfred, he's not an awful sort, but he is basically a spoiled brat. And it's not entirely his fault. Because, like, essentially, a major thing about, like, before mine came into noble society is that the High Bishop, his name was Bezenwast, and he was the treasured brother of the Archduke's mother. The Archduke's mother was a political schemer of high concept, but also kind of evil. Literally nobody liked being around, Veronica, except maybe his her grandson, and only the one grandson. And there's a lot of implication that she's the reason why Sylvester, the Archduke, is the way he is. Because while Sylvester is a well-meaning sort and reasonably competent, the thing is, he makes up for his flaws by filling in with capable people. But his flaws are that he's relatively indolent. Like, he lumps a lot of his excess work, or rather, his actual work is like meaningful work, onto Ferdinand. And that's not really fair to Ferdinand, who is just doing his job because it's how he survived up until now. Like, he was essentially eliminated for... Oh, no wonder. Okay. I need cable. Yeah. So, like, okay, Ferdinand, his backstory is that he was born as the product of essentially a breeding program. The princess from another sovereignty, another nation entirely. Keep in mind, they're duchies within a nation. So this is like a neighboring nation that previously warred with theirs, lost, and as kind of recompense, one of their daughters will enter this like villa, and it will be like a really high magic woman. And the reason for this is because mana levels in children follow along matrilineal lines. So if you want high magic to be born into your family, you go for like a pairing that has like a woman with like really good magic. So her whole thing is that she was going to have a child with like absurd magic and really good like elemental linings, like has like a, you know, all elements sort of thing, basically high stats. And this child was not going to serve any purpose other than fodder. They were going to be essentially harvested for a Fey Stone. And it would be a very powerful Fey Stone. So Ferdinand's dad, Sylvester's dad, it's fucked up. This society has some screwed up qualities to it. Like genuinely screwed up. So Ferdinand is born from this. And at a very young age, they realized that he was equitable for this and was going to be harvested for a Fey Stone. And rather than have that happen, his mother let his father know about this and gave his father the means to essentially ferry him away and, raise him in Ehrenfest. That's the duchy's name that they live in. Now, Ferdinand easily could have been a shoo-in for, like, Archduke material. But Ferdinand's father's first wife, Veronica, despised this. She did not like this. So she basically manipulated things around the scenes to ostracize him and began poisoning him at a very young age. He survived by the skin of his teeth and literally only entered the temple to basically say, I'm leaving the world of politics, leave me alone. And as a result of that, Veronica didn't try to kill him. Yeah, she's basically an awful person. And, Bezenwast being, like, outed as, like, a political schemer who was doing all this nonsense behind the scenes, gave Sylvester the excuse he needed to basically lock up his mother. But the problem is that, she's still got supporters. A lot of them. The Veronica faction, as it is known, is a powerful faction. And, still has people who are within it. But Veronica was also responsible. Yeah. Veronica was also responsible for why, Sylvester is like he is. Because she kind of wanted him dependent. So she kind of raised him to be a fool. And his ability to succeed is entirely in spite of her. But as a result of, like, the fact that it's typical that you kind of have to compete for the position to become an Archduke. One sec.
Witness the deep and sing for us.
I am still unable to initiate communication. How are you doing it?
We composed a resonance song to curb the effigy, tapping into the inner currents. We sacrificed our blood and our temples and let the metal in from the void to eat our flesh.
That's a lot to unpack. How do you tap into these inner currents?
Consume our blood, worship at our altars, curb the melody.
I do not understand.
Flat frequencies paint straight lines. The blood is a teacher. Each altar is a window.
Processing data.
Anyways, so basically, he succeeded in spite of her. But he's kind of traumatized by the experience because in addition to that, just getting into position to be Archduke was such an absolutely, like, mind-numbing experience that he had to compete against his own sister to do that. And he basically was like, nope, we're not doing that ever again. We're not competing against family. Family is family, and we love each other, and that's why, from here on out, my first son, Wilfred, will be Archduke no matter what. He will just get the position no matter what. And in addition to Veronica taking control of Wilfred's education from Wilfred's mother, the surety of his position meant that literally all of his tutors and whatnot, who have the authority to basically browbeat him into doing stuff, were basically like, nah, dog, I'm just gonna keep my seat. I don't need to do anything. This kid's fine. So this kid's like 7 years old. Now keep in mind, by this point, Mine is able to read. But she has also made it possible for several other people her age to read. Her young attendant, Gil, was once like a bratty, strugglesome child in the temple. And she helped him make a complete turnaround. And he's now basically the leader of one of her workshops. He can read, he can write, he can do math, he can do work orders for the workshop. And Lutz, her prior Cloud Cuckoo Lander handler in the Commoner division, works for the Gilberta company. He can read, he can write, he can do work orders. Okay, maybe they're like pretty miraculous as children. I wasn't a terribly good reader at this time, but at the same time, I'm a child raised in modern times and didn't have any high needs on me. You become an apprentice at 7 years of age. You need to be able to do stuff for yourself by that point in this world. This child can neither read nor write, can barely recognize his numbers or his letters. And this is in spite of having had tutors since he was maybe like 4 years of age. And the reason is because they just let him run away from everything to, hide from his tutors and do nothing. And nobody ever browbeats him for it. And he is the brattiest motherfucker. And the only reason he has a turnaround, the only reason, is because he starts bitching at mine in book 2 of part 3 about how it's unfair that she gets all this leeway, all this freedom to do whatever she fucking wants. She doesn't, by the way. She doesn't have freedom. She is quite literally having to do all this nonsense. She is moving from the temple to the castle to the temple to the castle on a regular basis because she has to do necessary bishop work. And this is all stuff that she cannot shirk. Yeah, it is literally only how he sees it. And she's when she first loses her cool, when she was I'm going to have to do a political intrigue and I don't want to have to do a political intrigue, she proceeds to lose her shit and be the only reason I'm doing as much shit as I'm doing right now is because you're fucking useless and shouldn't be, and it's pathetic. And she kind of lost control of her mana a bit and crushed him a bit. Not hard, but it's considered a bad thing when a noble basically loses their shit so firmly that they basically lash out and hurt somebody like that. And so she kind of just gripped him with her magic a little bit and freaked him out. But that didn't stop him from having these temper tantrums in front of her. So she proceeded to be you know what? At a later point, want to swap places for a day? You want to be a high bishop and see what my life is like? You want to see how that goes? And you don't actually see this perspective until the end of the book. But prior to that, she has an otherwise decent day because in his position, she's met by his attendants and her personal attendant, a woman by the name of Richarda, who managed both fucking Ferdinand at a young age, Sylvester at a young age, and Karstedt at a young age. She wet nursed Sylvester. So she basically was used to Sylvester's tendencies. And so she goes with mine during this time. And she loses her shit. This woman, think an almost granny with the spirit of an angry nanny losing her shit on a bunch of nobles who are her rank, mind you, and browbeating them for an hour for their indolence because they literally don't know anything about how to teach this kid and he hasn't learned shit. And then after all is said and done, they go to interact with Sylvester about a thing, and Ferdinand marches into the room and says in the coldest way possible that Sylvester's son is a absolute travesty, a waste of energy and effort, and he should disown him. And this freaks out fucking Sylvester and his wife, Florencia. who is basically, they're all like, excuse me, this is the first we're hearing about it. And they're, and mine and Richard are like, yeah, no shit. Your tutors haven't been telling you anything. I'm like, it gets to a point where they're basically like talking about how to salvage the situation. And Ferdinand's basically like, why are you even talking about trying to salvage this situation? It's a waste of time. He's useless. There is no way to save him. He's gonna show up at the winter social in 4 months and make a fucking mockery of himself, and he is never going to recover from that financially. You know, he is going to make an absolute joke of himself, and there is nothing you can do about that. I need to make sure I get some plates. I forgot about plates. And mine's like, I don't know. I bet you can. And he's like, I bet you can't. And she's like, I bet my book room time on this, my reading time on the fact that you can teach him. And he's like, and how would you prove that? And how are you so sure that you can do that, that you would bet your book room time on that? And she's like, because I have amazing fucking attendants who can teach him just fine. And I bet you if he can memorize one prayer for the ceremonies I have to do in the Harvest Festival and learn his musical scale, he can definitely learn. And while you're at it, you could probably just tie him to a chair and tell him his circumstances. You know, give him the fear of the gods even. And Ferdinand's like mentally like, I want to do that, but also I don't want to take the bait, but also she bet her book room time on this, and if she gives that up, I will hold her to this, and she'll have to work hard and deal with the fact that she can't read and actually do something other than that. And he's like, I'll hold you to your words. And then he comes back like a few hours later and the kid's actually shown some improvement. And he's just like, whatever, I guess I lose. And then glares at mine because she's like, ha! Right, plates. What did I need plates for? Foundations. Right. I'm gonna slap a storage device on that. I came all this way for nothing. But yeah, like, fucking... Yeah, Wilfred basically ends up actually having to be properly educated about things. And he actually does improve vastly over the course of, like, the times that you see him doing that. And then in his epilogue, you find out, like, he was already kind of improving within, like, a certain amount of time. Because he was realizing that, like, the reason why people weren't giving him any leeway was because the people were basically used to not giving an archduke's daughter any leeway. And even before that, they were used to not giving her any leeway when they didn't think of her as an archduke's daughter. So he's like, oh, it's not that they're being unfair, it's that I'm not being spoiled for a change. And also, succeeding at something and being praised actually feels good. And he kind of was like, initially, like, I don't like Ferdinand. Because Ferdinand is harsh with him. And he doesn't like Ferdinand because he's been told not to like Ferdinand. Because he was poisoned against him by Veronica, who would always just refer to him as a bastard. Yeah, he had a lot of ah moments. Though from what I understand in some background spoiling for myself, he gets a lot of, shall we say, ah moments, and eventually does end up losing his position as, like, the heir apparent. He's not unranked for it, but he does some stupid shit that really, like, prove that he's a little bit too gullible to be an archduke. And it's probably better off to hand off the position to somebody more guaranteed. One of those things is he's encouraged to go into what's known as the White Tower, where his grandmother is, and interact with her. And she kind of fills his head with a whole bunch of bullshit that leads him to doing like some political suicide moments. And about the only thing saving him is that he is, the Archduke's son and the heir apparent. But like, it does screw him out of the position. But it's genuinely for the best. Yeah, like, the political intrigue starts mounting up over time. Mine gets poisoned at one point and only survives because nobles in this setting tend to create what's called a Jareve potion. The Jareve potion is essentially if you're about to die, go into a state of catatonia for a time where your body will essentially heal itself rapidly and survive most near-death situations. It'll also liquefy hardening mana in the body, which is a response to death. Mine's creating this not to save herself from Yeah, it is some very, like, oh, fuck, what was it called? The cross the river Primaris or whatever it's called. Yeah. And it's very much a thing. But like in mine's case, at the start of part 3, it's done entirely because Ferdinand's pretty sure she needs to do it to fix her body. And the reason for that is because she initially you kind of assume that the reason Mine's such an invalid is because of her constant fevers. But that's not entirely the case. She gets those fevers because she has the Devouring and a lot of mana. But the true reason is also that she's technically died before. And Ferdinand does like a ritual to kind of like figure out, what her health situation is. I'm getting rid of my coupons a bit. But the problem is that she doesn't remember when she died or near died. No, don't catch on that. Don't get a run on this. I made this shirt just recently. I sewed a shirt and got a little bit dirty at breakfast this morning. But I'm still tickled pink that I'm wearing something that I made. It's so cool. Anyways, getting back to the subject. I can just delete some personnel. Oh, that would be so cool. Yeah. I don't know, it's like such a neat thing to just make your own shit. But anyways, mine, mine doesn't remember when she nearly died. And that's kind of a problem because it basically means that they don't, it means that the hardened mana in her body is kind of just going to require the absolute tippity top, pure, best potion they've ever made. Maybe more than one, possibly. And the problem is that these Jareve potions require, I think it's like 4 ingredients. 4 ingredients with the mana aligned to the 4 seasons. Because the 4 seasons have different mana associated with a different god. And while they can be acquired, like such ingredients can be acquired in a general sense within those seasons, to get the purest ones, you have to go through some rigmarole. And mine during the Harvest Festival went during what was known as the Night of Shusarain, or Shusaria. And she's like the goddess patron of autumn. And on that night, the moon turns purple. And it's such a cool concept. And because of that, certain trees, specifically the Fey tree, the Ruel, will proceed to blossom. And its blossoms will turn into these little fruit things that are essentially hard crystals that look like amethyst. and you walk up to this, you charge it with your own mana so that it's properly like typified to you. Yes, these are absolutely essential, or at least they're needed for the potion because they're as pure gets for like autumn mana, and it will like not get in the way of like the ideal potion. So like this whole ritual aspect of it is absolutely essential for the potion that she needs, and they actually fail to get the ingredient. But anyways, like she'll succeed eventually and just make the potion and then get poisoned and then get put under with the Jureve, and a time gap of like 3 or 4 years passes before she wakes up, during which she does not age or grow a little. So like everybody that she knows ages up like a chunk. Let's see. I'm gonna grab that. She eventually makes another one. By the way, like the first one doesn't completely get rid of the hardened mana in her body, because of course. So she winds up being like, you know, like better, but not perfect. Also, because she was unconscious for 4 years, she's got basically like atrophied muscles. But it's okay because her adoptive grandfather, who is a muscle man, and has been told to avoid her up until like a certain point in like the book I'm currently on, because, and I quote, "He's a boisterous individual and he may harm mine because he's excitable and has a lot of mana, and him just like picking her up might be too rough for her." I don't know. I find that funny because, like, I've seen pictures of him and he's my kind of man. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. Let's see. Architecture, foundations, customizer. Let's go with you. I've got another thing that's only 3. I guess a factory ladder would be good. I'm gonna buy that just because it looks cool.
All FICSIT-vetted materials are tested for toxins, hallucinogens, and other biologically adverse effects. Pioneers are advised not to immerse themselves in these materials and not to lick, eat, breathe in, or otherwise consume them.
Also, I should retrieve those summer sloops. But yeah, there's a lot of parts to like Ascendance of a Bookworm, but like I was like getting into it because like I want to experience the manga. I want to experience the story further. There is a manga, by the way. I've never read it because like the fact that it's like split up into parts makes it like confusing to parse like what all the intent is there. But the long and short of it is that, oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's get back to the oil fields. But yeah, the long and short of it is I've just never read the manga. But like the light novels, of course, go further, a lot further. They're like, let's see. I don't know at what point she gets poisoned. I think it's at the end of part 4 or part 5. but like there's like a dozen volumes within part 5. And, you know, at a certain point, I think it's after the time skip, she's counted as having like aged up enough that she's kind of required to go into the Noble Academy. And the general idea is that a noble is not properly acknowledged as a noble until they've graduated from the academy. That is an absolute requirement because that's where a noble goes to learn how to use magic. Now mine is a little bit advanced, that she's able to even summon a high beast. Typically that is something mastered when you go to the Noble Academy, but they kind of acknowledged that it was a necessity of the fact that she's doing all this traveling around and whatnot. It's funny. She gets taught how to do, like, make a high beast. A high beast is made with, like, a face stone that you dye in your mana, which is just, but, like, you charge it with your mana and, like, you know, it becomes yours entirely and nobody can really use it without great effort. And then to create a high beast, you kind of imagine it's entirely imagine based, where like you imagine the crystal growing larger and shaping into what you want it to be, and it can be anything. Typically, if you're an archduke, it has to be within the coat of arms of your duchy. So, for instance, Sylvester goes around on a 3-headed Cerberus lion. Entirely because he likes the idea of 3-headed Cerberus lions, whereas Ferdinand just has a standard lion. Yeah, not a giant snail. Mine did not want to use the standard lion because she finds them creepy. Because this kind of looks like a white statue. So she proceeded to imagine the cat bus from My Neighbor Totoro. And the thing shaped into a bus-shaped lion cat that functions just as reasonably as a bus, with space inside, soft seating, and seat belts. And Ferdinand regards this thing with such fucking disdain because he's a cultured motherfucker and has a thing for, like, aesthetics. You know, he once griped at her because a book that that the first book she ever printed had no leather cover, no jewel encrusting, and no colored painted pages. And he's like, there's no color, no jewels, no leather embossing. These things are supposed to be works of art, treasures. What are you doing? What are you doing with your life? And she's like, I just printed it. I've made like 30 of these. Yo, forgive me if I considered aesthetics last. And he's like, you made 30 of these? How? When? And she's like, literally recently. It was like, how did you do that? And she's like, through fucking printing. He's like, we're gonna have to talk about this. But anyways, with the bus, he stands outside of it and he's all like, this size is a waste of mana. And he's like, and she's like, okay, turns it into a personal vehicle. And she's like, he's like, this thing is ugly. Do not associate it with the coat of arms. And she's just like, okay, makes it look like a red panda. And he's like, what is this thing? Is it a grun? A grun's a type of fey beast that stinks really badly. Like, really fucking badly. So it is an association. And she's like, I don't know what that is. It's a lesser panda. And he's like, I don't know what that is either. And she's like, don't judge Lessie. And he's like, you've named it? And she's like, yes, and I love it. There's literally a fucking image in the light novel where she is standing there like gesturing at this thing with glee, and he's just not having it. And he's like, the tail's lame. It's too large. It's a waste of mana. And she's like, Don't try to stunt Leslie's tail. And forever after, he's trying to discourage her from whipping this thing out, like getting her to ride with other people. And then like, it gets to a point of her like taking so long to like walk between areas of the Archducal Castle that like the Archdukes are like, you're late. And she's like, yeah, this is really far from my room. And like Riharda's like, you do know that she's an invalid, right? I had to carry her most of the way, but I can't carry her the entire way because it looks indecent. And he's like, and she's like, can I ride my high beast? And like, he's like, wait, your high beast is small enough to fit inside a building? And she's like, I can make it any size I want it to be. But like, it's rideable inside of a building. And it's like, show me it. If it's funny, I'll let you do that. And Ferdinand's sitting there and he's like, no, Sylvester, no. She whips it out. He busts a gut laughing and he's like, that looks ridiculous. Yeah, okay. You can wield this wherever you want. And like, so many people actually are like, oh, this is actually pretty nice. And he's like, yeah. It's just so hilarious. And like, maybe a handful of people are like, I will not ride that thing. But like, any kids like, cool. And even one of her guards, her name's Brigitte, and she's a girl, and she's, fairly stoic, but she's like, oh, it's cute. And it's so soft inside. I've never ridden in a high beast like this. And like Ferdinand's just like, stop converting nobles to your ways. He doesn't say it out loud, but like, he's the kind of guy where like him not saying anything and him expressing it all are still loud indictments. It's like absolutely hilarious. Okay, this is actually pretty spacious. I'm gonna add more. I always need more. Okay. This is the part where it becomes kind of annoying. What's the actual pump of those? Okay, only uplifts 10 meters. Storage. Foundation, organization, fluid buffer. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna put the buffer at the intake. Oh, that is unfortunate. I need frames. I'm gonna put down refineries. I need copper rolls. It just came over here. I swear to God. I don't have the plastic for this. Oh, fuck. Okay. First rule or order of business. Get the refineries up. Make plastic. Get fuel. Actually, what all am I using the fuel for? I can't use it for... I don't have packaging yet. It's gonna take some thinking as I slide over. Yeah, the books also have a really robust cast. Like, every so often they'll introduce somebody, and they'll be a minor role, mind you. But, like, mine becoming an Archduke's daughter gave her, like, additional staff. But, like, she's got all of her attendants at the temple. you know, she kind of gave up one in the form of Delia, who sort of sold her out at the end of part 2, but not really. It's complicated. She's 8 years old, became rather attached to a child with the devouring in their temple, and was also of the belief that if she's pretty enough, she can be an attendant who lives a relatively good life by giving flowers to nobles. Keep in mind, she's 8 years of age and already thinking about essentially silk work for blue priests. It's unpleasant. But anyways, the previous high bishop manipulated her into thinking that she could save Dirk, the baby, from his like issues with the devouring, and get him like an adoption contract. When in actual fact, he was basically bought as like as a slave by a dude, and it was all to like put mine into a position where a dude would basically like trade like one child with mana for another, so he could get mine. Yeah, Bezenwast, the high bishop, was not a good person. He's dead now, but he looms large in terms of his impacts upon the temple. Literally, the only reason Ferdinand is as overworked as he is because the high bishop was fucking useless. Like, for all of his political scheming and machinations, he wouldn't do any work in the temple and was embezzling at that. So, it's a whole thing. But like, you know, like now that he's gone, you know, things have started to peter out and simplify. But I need foil, I need frames, I need so many basic things. I think foil is over here. You. I was gonna need this anyways. You. Let's make space in my inventory. Let's put these in their rightful place. Which of these? Which of these? Spitter. Let's wait here a moment. But yeah, so like Delia proceeded to like get pulled into like, you know, essentially screwing over mine and also walking out on her you know, a tendency to her. So that she survived the blow up, which quite literally involved like a knockdown drag out brawl between a foreign count, Bezenwast, and the foreign count's devouring child slave grunt soldiers who were like basically, you know, essentially forced to do his bidding and also using enhancement magic. Between them, mine, her guard, Damuel, her dad, and her attendant Fran Though Fran didn't really put in much of a contribution because he comes from the temple and they generally don't use violence in the temple. Like, it's generally just not something they're accustomed to. And after that, like, blew up to the point that, like, Ferdinand showed up unknowing and whatnot, and he figured out that mine had been properly adopted via contract, like, before this all happened. Just to be clear, the reason for, like, what I mean by that is, like, Sylvester, under, like, the looks of a blue robes priest, gave mine a pendant that if she ever, like, was in dire need for his help, he basically was like, press your blood into this and I will show up lickety-split. And it turns out that was an adoption contract, and mine basically was, like, immediately considered the Archduke's daughter at that point. And he proceeded to be like, oh, I have authority to step in now, because if she'd just been a commoner, there wasn't anything he could do. Bezenwast, claimed, oh, that she just kind of attacked me. And, I mean, he'd be required to listen because Bezenwast and the Count were nobles from peerage. But, like, the moment he's like, oh, I see how this is. Okay, that's good. Time for, 1, 2, 3, 4, I declare a mana duel. And then proceeds to get into, like, a fight with the foreign noble. And the clash of mana is so great that everybody in the room who wasn't otherwise shielded by, like, a barrier was immediately vaporized. Delia was only allowed into the barrier mine put up because, like, sympathy, but also because Delia essentially meant no harm and wasn't holding malicious intent. But, like, when a bunch of other priests, like, who were, like, in line with, like, Bezenwas tried to get in, like, one of them gets in, two of them bounce off of it because they either, like, wanted to hurt Delia or they wanted to hurt Rosamine, or mine, whichever, doesn't matter. And, it did not go well for them. Like, literally described as, like, obliterated without a trace. Yeah, this shit's going to make me some coupons. Probably not many. Oh yeah, definitely deserved. And Delia only wasn't executed because mine was basically like, she meant well, and Sylvester's like, she still committed a high treasonous crime, but whatever, I am a giving sort. So what would you, daughter of an archduke, say for this? And mine was like, I have to actually do something worthy of saying that it's a punishment. So she basically said Delia had to live in the orphanage for the rest of her life, like house arrest. She could not leave the temple. She could not go elsewhere. She would have to live there for the rest of her days. And this is kind of like a major thing for Delia because she had a phobia of the orphanage from growing up during the hard times. And wouldn't enter there except to look after Dirk in the first place. And she adjusts, but she's not necessarily happy to be living in the orphanage. Yeah, better than death. But people do sympathize with her. She ends up befriending the orphans from Hase who left Hase to join the temple to avoid being split up from their siblings. But But you also see like a short from their perspective where they're kind of bemoaning the fact that like it was kind of a major trade-off because like orphans in non-temple orphanages, because like temples are not everywhere. It's mostly like a capital thing that has like temples. And the temple like will disseminate their like blue priests to manage rituals for like certain points in the year. And this is like necessary because receiving the blessing from the temple is necessary to ensure the ongoing prosperity of your land. If you do not receive a blessing for like more than 2 years, your like little province will fall into a wasteland. That is just a feature of this world. There's nothing they can do about it. You know, like it's considered like a huge snub to a city if they do something bad enough that blue priests no longer go there. Ashe, having committed an offense against the nobility, specifically the temple, has led to them disseminating rumors that Ferdinand is not likely to send anybody to look in upon, Ashe. But anyways, if you're an orphan that is like not in a temple orphanage, you don't have near as much as those in the temple, but you are also not under as many restrictions. One of the reasons why it was like kind of like an issue that like mine just showed up and took some orphans was that essentially orphans in like, the temple, it is possible for them to be adopted or bought. And yes, bought is the word. In the case of like the two girls whose purchase was like underway when their brothers were like, nah, they're like, he's holding them back, so you can't like take them. Basically, they were being sold to be concubines. They were like barely baptism age, so yes, think like 8-year-olds. But they were like oddly pretty for their age, so it was assumed that they would like be prettier once they were grown. But if you're like an orphan who ages out of the system, the local like city or like township just kind of gives you a plot of land. And it's not like you don't have experiences farming it. During like the summer months, orphans will be made to toil in the fields. But at the same time, they are kind of looked after by the community. So like, it's not like they have no worth, and it's not like they're looking at nothing. If you're a boy, you get better out of it though, because you're more likely to get like a larger plot of land, whereas a woman gets a smaller plot of land that will never really be profitable, but it is a marital bargaining chip. It's just that it's not a big enough one that they tend to get like a good marriage out of anything. So it's like a kind of a trade-off. And once this is done, I'm heading back. I'm getting my coupons. Yeah, that gave me a lot of coupons. Yeah, like that was one of those things that mine was like, it was like a difficult pill for her to swallow because keep in mind, she comes from modern Japan, which ostensibly is a free country. Ostensibly. It has its problems just as anybody else does, but like, even as hierarchical as it can be, somebody who's above you in hierarchy in Japan doesn't necessarily have the authority to just order you around. You have to be deferent, but like, it's not like because, Oyaji-san gave you an order and is like an Oyaji, you have to do it. You are allowed to say, sorry, I can't do that. That's not respectful. You have freedoms. And the idea of like all this stuff is difficult for her. And it's not like it's completely alien to our world either. During the Victorian era, you could rent orphans from like an orphanage in, say, London for like, let's say a halfpenny. So like half a penny. That's, I'm not sure if you know like English money outside of the euro. It's basically like the smallest form of a cent. I actually don't know how the euro works, but I think the euro is done in like, you know, dollars and cents too. But yeah, like, it's like the smallest increment of money you can get in both like the British and formerly Canadian, Canadian currency. Like 1 cent or a penny is like, or like a penny is 1 cent. So like literally like 0.01. A halfpenny was literally half a penny. That was like a thing back in like the ye olde days when English money was done in like shillings and pences. I think they still do pences, but shillings no longer exist. But you used to be able to, basically rent an orphan and, like children worked the mines in like coal mines, back then too. Like we're talking stunted growth and rickets from being in like a dark place in bad positions for long periods of time. And of course the reason, because they were small. So like that's the whole thing. Mine straight up kind of comes to the realization that by like kind of accepting this, she is kind of giving up an aspect of herself from before, but it's like it's unavoidable. Yeah. It was a big thing in like the Industrial Revolution. Like child labor laws came along very late in the late towards like the end of the Industrial Revolution, the beginning of the 1900s in like the West specifically, or like not the West, in America and England. Like I once wrote a paper on this, not specifically about this, but yeah. That's like a fair estimate for most countries, I think, in like Western Europe and North America. A lot of this all happened around a similar time for various similar reasons. In England, one of the reasons why, say, like the coal engine even took off as much as it did was quite literally because of like essentially like factory owners trying to like work people harder because of seasonality. Like at the time, factory looms were run by water wheels more often than not. But a river is not going to run at high like levels all season long. It's gonna have like downsides. And rivers are, hot money fucking real estate to buy along. So getting a factory relative to, labor was basically difficult. And of course, seasonal. So you'd occasionally get those periods where nothing's really happening. And then you'd get those high periods. And people would work longer hours during those times. Until such point as the British government was like, yeah, that's not going to do. I want to say similarly in America, something kind of more harsh happened. It was known as the Triangle Textiles Factory fire. It was basically like a factory full of just mostly women who were like working, sewing garments, and, as you do back then, people smoked. But a problem with fucking like, fabric is it's very, very fibrous and combustible. And a fire broke out in the Triangle textiles factory, and the doors were locked shut because unionizers were like going around being like, "Hey, want to join a union?" So they were like, "No, we're not letting someone come in here and unionize to us. That's not happening." And so fucking a bunch of people were locked into a factory that had no way out other than like maybe the second floor windows or the windows, and the fucking stairs weren't an option. I don't think they had stairs. They had gone hard on elevators. Those immediately quit out. People began chucking themselves out the windows. One dude observed the let's see. Yeah, it was honestly kind of fucked up. So people began, a dude who was like observing this, like a journalist, a decent dude who was kind of a muckraker, which means that he was basically like going around in the muck, as they call it, to dig up dirt on things and get scoops. But he was a decent sort. He wrote about this, about how literally women were jumping out of this place. They had early photos of these street lights, these glass covered street lights that were lodged into the ground, where a woman had impacted and broken through. So the thing about unions in North America is that they serve and served an important purpose. Entering into the 1900s thereabouts, there was a lot of labor laws that needed to be, but unfortunately there was a lot of enterprisers who didn't want them to be. People who were making their bottom dollar off of this nonsense, and so they would hire strike breakers, the Pinkertons, and the mafia. And people disappeared during this time. People who were unionizers just up and disappeared or died. I think it was Jimmy Hoffa was the name of the dude who was a mysterious disappearance. And after that fire I mentioned, a dude who was I think it was I forget his name, but it was a very wealthy millionaire in America at the time, and he himself had factories. But he was oh yeah, let's get in on this because this is starting to get fucked. And he basically went around kind of looking at factories, seeing surveying things and seeing how they were run. And the factory runners were very specifically doing things to hide the fact that their setup was screwed up. A major thing that led to this, setup, was the follow-up outcry of the fire, which was that, the factory owner just opened a new factory across the water from it. No big issue, just opened another factory. And people were screw you, dude. And so this guy's going around, and he's looking into this shit, and he's okay, yeah. This should not be. This should not be. This certainly should not be. Yeah, okay. We're gonna have to start actually legislating. And so a bunch of laws were made, and unions became a thing. But the problem with unions in the modern era is they're kind of structured somewhat asininely to the point that yes, you'll have people who would rather unions didn't exist so they could work people to their bones. But at the same time, you'll have cases where a union is protecting somebody who does not deserve to be protected. My dad and my mother work with trucking dispatch companies a bunch. And I remember my dad telling me about this exchange she witnessed where like a dude was like, you know, talking with him about like tax forms and stuff like that, receives a call from one of his like, you know, truckers. And the dude basically had too much in his truck, which by the way, if you are a trucker, most truckers have control over that. And the reason is because you get more money for the load that you bring. You know, it's like either like per load or how much of the load. And so they try to stuff their trucks with like more than is safe. And because they've stuffed their truck with more than is safe, they occasionally get caught by scales along the road. And this dude got caught with on a scale and was told he couldn't go across like a ferry that connected a major area. And, you know, like the truck was, I think, potentially going to be impounded. And all this dude said was, that's not good. And the dudes are like, well, if you don't like it, you can come pick it up yourself. And this guy was union. And despite saying that and doing a thing that would legally get you shoved off of a job if you weren't union, the dude couldn't be fired. And unfortunately, unions have a tendency to be overly defensive of people who are like that. Like, you'll get teachers who are a union who act like shit, treat their students like shit, and the school district will do nothing because they're union. At the same time, they still serve a valid purpose, so, like, I can't judge them too harshly, but, like, I do judge them for that. I recognize it as a necessary feature because, like, let's be fucking honest, yo. Genuinely speaking, some of these people are scum. Let's see. Okay. Oil, plastic, crude oil, plastic. That's not the way to go. That's what I want. Yeah. That's another thing is that like a lot of the unions here are like, if it's all ordered and structured reasonably, then, you know, a lot like the unions serve a purpose. But there's a lot of times where like a union in North America will like kind of just like be obstructive to like a worker. Like one of the problems with say like the instrument techs union that I was told existed was that because I previously trained as an instrument tech, was that they have a tendency to be like you can only work certain amounts of hours. But, like, if you're just starting out as an apprentice or in anything, you want all the hours you can get because you're trying to become a journeyman. So it's like a catch-22 of they ensure that somebody's not working you over much through some nonsense, but they control what jobs you can get, and they control how much you can work those jobs, and how much you're actually going to get paid. And also, you have to pay fees to them anyways, so, like, your bottom dollar is cut into either way. Okay. Petroleum coke. Coke. Oh, okay. So those are things that I can use. Yeah, you don't have to join a union, to be fair. That is a thing. You do not have to join a union. It is not obligate. But, certain fields like I've trained for different forms of technical work. And the subject of union versus not union does come up. Unions will actually be a pretty big help for getting you started in a field sometimes. And they will get you jobs. But like, you know, for a time, you'll probably be on a job board, so. And it might not necessarily be constant work. You might end up having to drive around a bunch. There are trade-offs. So it's like, again, I don't like hate on unions. I just find that the current structure surrounding them is kind of fucked. And it's not helped that like in the past, unions have basically manipulated things to like force their way. Like during the Reagan era, you know, like the American president Ronald Reagan, was known for basically shutting down, I think it was the transportation union, because the union was basically like gridlocking America's transportation industry because they were like, give us our thing, or, you know, we're not going to work. Yep, an entire country contingent on, say, like transportation by air and whatnot, you know, essentially having to deal with that. Okay, show. Polymer, yeah, okay. So 60. How much can I get out of one of these? I can get 240 out of one of these. Six, 12, 18, 24. Okay. Let's make you all polymer resin. Because right now I need plastic. That is 130 per. 4 times 130 is 6, 9, 12, 4, 520. Ah, pipes! Ah! I'm gonna put down a thing. Eh. I would say America's thing with unions isn't that eccentric. They've just had a sordid history with it. And in addition to that, they've never really had one of those, shall we say, wipe the slate clean moments that a lot of European countries have had. Like, France has restructured its government several times within the last 150 years. Like, after the Napoleonic era, they went through 5 different republics. And that's before they went through the I think it was the Vichy era is what it was called. I know Germany went through quite the hell of a shakeup within the last century. And then a reunification. So I imagine that restructured a lot of stuff intrinsically. So in that vacuum of stuff being done, I imagine that's when unions started to pop up and nobody was really saying a whole lot about it. I don't know what to say about England or my country, but my country has had its own things within the last 150 years, Like our universal medication, our Medicare, originally was put in under a dude who was only like alive in the last century or so. A dude by the name of Tommy Douglas. Came from Saskatchewan. Oh, right. Right, so they dovetailed off of like the old guild structure. Never mind. Yeah. I don't think North America ever had guilds per se, like not in the same way. Like things have the name guild, but like yeah, like things have the name guild in them, like the Screen Actors Guild. Or shall we call it the Film Actors Guild? But like, Europe definitely had basically that, like, that infrastructure for unions. Though I will say, those historically have had problems too, considering, like, your ability to perform a trade, was contingent on getting into a union. But yeah, like, contingent on getting into a union. They made a big deal about you living your life a specific way. Like, we're talking, there was like a personal conduct, charter for them. But like, that personal conduct included literally being like, you have to go to church X amount of fucking times, and you have to be involved in a specific church. Which, when London or England was going through its whole rigmarole with the Reformation, keep in mind, just because the Anglican Church is like its own thing apart from the Catholic Church, doesn't mean that they didn't have their own issues with Protestants. They had a lot of issues with Protestants. A lot of issues. Fucking to the point that I would say like one of the reasons why the Puritans left England is because they kind of brought shit on their heads. Like, okay, they gained power in Parliament and then put in sumptuary laws. Oh yeah, that too. But yeah, like, they gained power in Parliament and put in sumptuary laws, which essentially means that, they were like, yeah, so you have to not drink. Drinking is banned. And partying is also banned. You're not allowed to party. Partying is gross. I have spoken, for I am a Puritan. They took that shit way far. So of course they were basically told to fuck off. But also, like, funny thing with the guilds. This is something I learned in a textiles history class. They once outlawed the ownership and public wearing of printed cloths from India. They called them calico cloths. And a thing about India that's kind of unique versus most of Europe until fairly recently, i.e. the Victorian era, was that India had the ability to stay dyes into cloth, which was not a thing Europe had for a very long time. And it's one of the reasons why certain cloths were just never washed, is because if you washed them, the dye would just come right out. But entering into the Victorian era, the ability to make dyes that stay in cloth became a thing. But I think the East Indian Dutch Company or whatever, the British East Indies Company, began importing shit from India. And it was undercutting the textiles factories of the day. So like the guilds were like, You're not allowed to wear this shit. In fact, it's banned. In fact, if you wear it in public, we will rip it off of your body. And they fucking would. They'd have enforcers going around and being like, that's a bitch in a calico dress. It's gotta go. I'm not even shitting you, Chonka. 100%. They would tear cloth off of a person in broad fucking daylight because it was banned. It's like, you know what, bitch? Them's fighting words. Let's see. Okay, frameworks. Frameworks. I keep losing the plot on the way here. Refinery. Okay, yeah. Okay, this I gotta hear. Was Coke basically being like, if you've got a Pepsi can in your cabin, you are la band? God. That reminds me of my, oh, that's awful. But yeah, that reminds me of my, my buddy Joey used to drive for a company called Prime. Trucking company for dispatch. And he didn't own his truck. Yo, he considered owner-operator a bit, but like way expensive. Just buying a truck requires like a mad fuck-ass loan. And he didn't really care for it very much because they had bullshit restrictions, but also were kind of asinine towards their drivers. Like, they'd send you to the ass end of the country, but then they'd put restrictions on how far you can drive in a day. Even if, like, you were driving home, they'd be like, you have to stop and rest before you can drive, like, the final 10 kilometers or miles or whatever to your home. He did not like this shit. But also, trucks have, like, a fucking thing on them that like gauges if like you come to a screeching halt. And the thing is, sometimes a trucker doesn't have the ability to come to a better stop. Yeah, so like he knew a guy who literally lost his job. I think it was like literally about to retire anyways. Because like somebody fucking like brake checked him. Which, by the way, if you do that to a truck, whatever happens is on you. Like, full stop. Whatever happens to you is on you. I remember hearing about some kids in like Seattle. And then before you ask why Seattle, family's got property down there. It's like a kind of like mild vacationing trailer in like a camping community. We've had that since I was little. But like my dad visited once and read like a local newspaper and heard about some kids who survived. But they brake checked a semi-truck. Now, a semi-truck can stop as fast as they possibly can, but they are massive. And that fast will not be enough to save you. It squashed the back of the car they were in. Let's see. So, 520... I need All right, this shit. I'm gonna need to make a bunch of these. I'm gonna need water. Yeah. I think ultimately one of the major things that, here's the thing. Americans are very freedom-minded. And it's like a trope, but it's also kind of just the actual culture. So a lot of people are making the decision every time, especially when it comes to unions and whatnot, between freedom of movement, freedom to do things your way, freedom to not be observed, freedom to essentially not have somebody's hand jammed squarely up your ass, or the general safety and surety of that hand jammed squarely up your ass. Because it will be a hand jammed squarely up your ass, and that's the thing with driving restrictions and laws and unions, which is why I would say if there's any issues with unions, it comes from that sort of temperament of preferring freedom over quote unquote safety. Because as you've probably seen, there's a lot of people now who would hoe themselves for the illusion of safety. Let's see. So 30 and got a bunch over here. So I'm gonna make residual plastic. 6. Okay, so that's 60. 6, 12, 18, 24, 32. $32 plus 40, 36. It's gonna be a pain in the ass because I also gotta get water running. My consumption is way high. Really should set up that that coil that coal burning thing up in the mountains. The mountains. Ah, fuck it. I'm gonna do that. I'm sorry, this has been such an ADHD riddled mess. No, get up. Oh. Ah, One sec. Let me just land over here and deal with that. Got a clanker in chat. I really wish I could. Oh. /ban roving gridiron BYG. There we go. I thought I was misspelling that super hard. Let's add to the block list. There we go. Okay. But yeah, I generally find like the liberty focused mindset of Americans kind of admirable. Mostly because like I find it kind of, admittedly it's also true in America. You're not allowed to own like, melee weapons for like self-defense. Like in most states of the union, like that's kind of, even ones with open carry. But like at the same time, self-defense is more respected in America. Here in Canada, it's like, oh, you gotta make considerations for exit and whatnot. You shouldn't like immediately go to violence. It's like, this person attacked me. Turning my back to them is like the stupidest thing to do. And if they attacked me, they're already past de-escalation. I don't know, it's like, I feel like if you're at a point where you're more compassionate about those who are willing to break the law against you, you're suffering a inappropriate and, dare I say, suicidal level of compassion, because you're disregarding the needs of the actual like people who have to deal with that situation. Sure, Chanka. What's a fun fact in ZZZ? Yeah, if it's a moving shadow, it's probably the Sky Manta. They're not hostile. You can literally get up onto their back if you get jetpack fuel that allows you to go that far. I've done it before. You get an achievement. All the Mindscape photos of them are canon. What's a Mindscape photo?
This is a shrine to Windows and Meeting.
Ah, okay. So it's like something that you kind of like add to the character, you know, once you've gotten duplicates of them. Okay, so that's connected there. Got nuts on me, right? Got some. Okay. Nuts. Let's put those into one of my active slots because I'm going to need them in but a moment. Ow. Fuck you.
Tuning into the effigy.
I suspect there is a misunderstanding. The effigy and I are different entities.
Discordant. What is your root?
I am an instantiated artificial intelligence inhabiting digital space. I am in the signals sent between satellites. I am hosted on servers and have no corporeal form, only synchronized cloud platforms.
The effigy is not an effigy?
It most certainly is,
Ow.
not of me. They are, how should I put it? Extremely flat.
Compatible music. We are writing new symphonies.
You know what? I don't care if this is cheating. Fuck you. Die. Die. So my question to you then, Chanka, since like you mentioned these mindscapes, are they salacious? I'm joking, of course, but like I have played porn gotchas, shall we say, that exist, where that was like a thing. Where part of the benefit of getting a dupe was that you like further expanded your ability to, shall we say, mingle with your characters. This one called Another Eidos that's basically that. Where like it's like a fantasy setting, though apparently I heard it revealed that to be something of a lie. Because like it starts off with your character being like part of the hero party and fighting like some Dark Lord dragon dude who's like keeping all the world's nations in check. And you proceed to like do like vicious battle with him. And he kills your friend, but like you do significant damage to him and receive a lethal wound. So he proceeds to be like, I'm going to merge with you now. And merging, of course, is like sexual. But then somebody was like, oh yeah, he's actually just like a dude who turned himself into a dragon with nanotech or something like that. I'm like, what? That's lame. Look, a little bit of sci-fi and fantasy is cool, but I find it irritating when it's like, let's sci-fi the fantasy away. That has its place, but it's not like my favorite thing. Okay. Let's set up. Some coal power. Power. Okay. Yeah. Like, Final Fantasy XIV has a lot of, like, sci-fi mixed into it, but, like, I think it only really started to become a problem as it got into, like, the current stuff. Because, like, it went from, like, Magic World with, like, relatively little to basically, like, you're in a cyberpunk city that just so happens to still be using magic in the form of magical, like, metal called electrope. Let's see. I'm gonna have one pipeline, which means I can fit a maximum of currently 300. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 45. That's 20 plus 50. $25. Oh wait, no, it wasn't. I'm dumb. You can tell me failing at math right there. I'm like 20 plus 50, and it's like, no, it's not. It's 225. Get your shit together, Ashe. I almost said my legal name again. I know it's like horrifically common, but like still, I try to keep that under wraps. It's funny, I got this buddy Manda. She's Joey's wife. She streams. But her stream name is literally just like her real name plus monster. Or like a nickname that she has plus monster. It's not her last name, but still. And I remember like rating on her when I first started streaming. And she's like, oh, hey, Brian. And I'm just like, thanks for blasting my slave name. Or my dead name to the world. And she kind of panicked. I was like, it's fine. I don't actually care. Okay. I've got 3, 6, 7. 7 times 45. Okay, I have to get rid of one of these. No, actually, not rid. Under tune. 70. 60. So let's see, 45 minus 15. 30. So what I want is, wait, what? No. Yeah, okay, 30. Or, alternatively, 315 or 300 divided by 15. I am failing at this math. I'm just going to reduce this down until it personally only requires... There we go. You know what? Just 29. So it's like just a little bit under. Okay. But each of these requires 15. I'm sure I'm supplying just fine over here. Thought I wouldn't need this, but oil production shit is kind of costly. 30 milliwatts per. Yeah, that was gonna fucking jam up things. So let's get some coal power in here. Ow! Okay, this production, water. Look at this beautiful, beautiful cavern waterfall. About to put these water pumps in here. Not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. Let's position those better. No, not like that. I'm missing quick-wire. I'm going to have to suffer these things. Oh no. Fuck. I need foil, and I'm gonna have to go back. Let's see. Nope. On this fucking Mesa thing. Nothing. I think I've got that one though. Oh shit. Ow. Try and catch me, bitch. The sun's rising. Foil! Foil! I need foil. Probably too much foil, but still. All of this needs to be reworked before I get into the phase 3 materials. So gonna be. Ah, the Red Forest. I don't want to go there. Lovely place. Full of the worst shit you can face in this game. I'm not going there until I'm properly, strapped. Giant spooters, those big chonky guys that I was like, seeing before, many of which are radioactive. Yeah, you can run into some of these things that emit radiation. A lot of radiation. It is not fun to face them. Actually, let's break this down, break this down, break this down, break this down. Spike in consumption, but, I can make it work. Okay. Actually, I've got an idea. Is it pretty? No. Is it neat? Yes. Logistics. Got plenty of those. In fact, I'm going to... Okay. Da, 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 da. Okay. That's a murder. Let's try something. Let's make it look a little bit artistic. Yeah. Ha! There we go. Very quickly getting a hold of some resources. Oh, that's off of an impure node. Okay. Let's put a merger somewhere around here. It is coal power. That's as intended. This thing is moving as fast as it can. And that's supplementing. Now that that's there, I may as well, while I'm here, let's see about special. Man. What do I need? All right, smokeless. Unlocking that, I will also unlock that. Where am I? So in theory, if I set up a smoke and whatever setup here, I can set up I could probably set up something. Fuck it. Hello, Sulfur. Sulfur, where are you at? Splitter. There we go. Go. Foundation. Foundation. No, fine. I'll just use one of these. Once again, it don't need to look good. Production, assembly. This sandy area is way too inconsistent. Okay. Let's get a feel. Let's get a feel. Let's make... black powder. I don't know. Because I also don't know, like, how far along in the books they would be technically. Oh, I need rods. I'm so annoyed. I keep having to go back. I also, like, from what it seems like, it's doing reasonably well, but I don't know how much, money Apple TV is willing to put into a fairly high concept sci-fi, because despite those oftentimes pulling mad money and good ratings, the people who've historically had their fingers in that particular pie have made it like a point of ha. You know, they've made it a point to, like, throw up their hands at some point and be like, oh, we're not doing this anymore. Why? Because. Yeah, it's the most infuriating aspect of all this. It's like The Expanse, for instance. Technically, it ended at a good point before a time skip, like a significant time skip. But also technically, the only reason it like shuffled around as it did is because sci-fi is dildos. Fuck you. Actually, I don't need to go all the way back. I just need to go down into the ravine where there's, like, iron. Yeah, like, okay, the channel Sci-Fi, was originally spelled SCIFI, which is the kind of accepted abbreviation of, science fiction. But it got respelled to Sci-Fi, SCYFY, because, and I am quoting here, they didn't want to be associated with basement virgins and losers. And after that, they kind of started just canceling, like, long-running science fiction shows on the basis of they didn't want that to be their main brand. Little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb. Fleece was white as snow. Yeah, sorry. Sometimes I hear the song where it is not. Is there a construction base somewhere around here? You. Get out of my inventory. Gross. Okay. Rods. Yeah. Then again, like, on American TV, that's been a thing more than a few times. There's, there's, what was it like? What was it called? Much More Music. That might be the Canadian name. MTV, music TV. So music TV goes back decades and used to show nothing but music, like music videos and whatnot. Kind of, sort of, they lost their way, but they still do cartoons. It's just that their cartoon animation studios are basically like, let's just do nothing but SpongeBob and Teen Titans Go. Not even the good Teen Titans. But, like, at this point, SpongeBob's had so many fucking episodes, I think it's surpassed, like, The Simpsons. Yeah. And the thing is, this has happened more than a few times. Like, MTV was just MTV, and then they, like, started moving away from music. And then we're like, you know what would be good? If we started MTV2. And MTV2, did nothing but music, of course. But then they decided they weren't getting the ratings they wanted. So they decided to make it less about music. Until it wasn't about music. And then they decided, you know what? Let's make an MTV3. And make that about music. Surely this will go differently this time. It did not, in point of fact, go different. Ow. Okay. Now you're making shit. And I need... Oh. I mean, that's one of the things with like MTV in general, is that after a while it went from like music to, you know, like not just reality, but like it also had some of like the big name like cartoons of the 90s. So like stuff that was adult, but perhaps not too adult. Admittedly, Golden Boy is fairly adult, but not like racy, or it's racy, but not like supremely. Barbarella. I can't remember if I saw Barbarella. Stripperella I saw, but that might be the same series under a different name. Pam Anderson is like a spy action hero who's also a stripper. Because I won't lie, I fucking loved that show for as little as I saw it. I don't remember Cyborg, but like, I remember that show being so hilarious because it was like a whole episode dedicated to her being like, you know, like them being like, oh, Pam Anderson's going to show up, and she's like, oh, cool, yeah. And people are like, you two look alike. And you're just like, oh, for real? For real? Let me see. Barbarella cartoon. That's its own thing. Okay, I'm thinking of a completely different thing by Stan Lee of all things, literally called Stripperella. I've never heard of Barbarella, but I like her fit. Okay, so... Okay, first and foremost, I'm waiting until I got 50 more of this shit. I might make a facility dedicated to making coal and sulfur here. Or not coal and sulfur. Black powder and bio coal, or whatever the stuff is here. Maybe.
Tool belt expanded. I compounded sulfur's tristatic atom matrix into a quadrimensional gate vortex. You can now carry more stuff.
Noblesque. I'm gonna learn how to make that. There we go. I still can't get over the fact that like Stan Lee made a series that was like dedicated to literally just Pam Anderson, more or less as herself, but also under the name Stripperella, and she was a stripper, and also an action hero, a secret agent spy. Kind of a mishmash of the two. But yeah, fucking like... Kid Rock and Pam Anderson guest starred in an episode, and they're like, oh, a lot of people say, we look alike. And like Kid Rock's like, oh no, you don't look like my wife. But you know what, what my wife does look like? Stripperella. Yeah, Valerie Iron's Protection was also kind of a guilty pleasure because it's so stupid, but it's so fun at the same time. Okay.
Detonator and Basic Nobelisk unlocked. Most obstacles can be cleared with the Basic Nobelisk. It is most effective against organic material and is able to destroy small boulders and porous rock. Deployed Nobelisks will stick to the first solid surface they touch and queue on the universal detonator. If you do not recall the order in which you deployed the Nobelisks, remember Fixit does not take responsibility for any harm caused due to human error, even if those errors are genetic.
Yeah, Relic Hunter was really fun. I wish they'd made more of it. Because it was amusing how, like, some episodes they'd be dealing with, like, a legitimate magical fucking artifact. And some episodes it would literally just be, like, an urn full of fucking nitroglycerin. It filled that niche that fucking, like, Lara Croft, like, created without ever really filling. Yeah, I went to crazy places. Like, I remember this is, like, one episode where, like, a Saudi prince is at, like, her school. And then, like, a whole thing happens because a dude's, like, weirdly, like, hanging around the school, but without any mention of him. And nobody knows that the dude's a Saudi prince anyways. And, like, at one point she gets in a fight with this dude and kicks his ass. And it turns out it's this dude's bodyguard who's, like, a brother to him and sworn to, like, watch him. And then, like, 5 minutes later, the dude finds out his father's died in the Civil War. And he has to go back and sort things out. But he's like, I need your help finding this ancient relic that can discern, like, liars and untrustworthy sorts from, like, truthful, genuine people. And all through this, he's got this uncle who's, like, trying to butter him up. They finally get this thing. And he's like, okay, bodyguard guy, hold this. And he's like, oh, come on. And he's like, please, I must know. And he's like, okay, fine. Holds it. Thing just doesn't light up. And he's like, okay, that's good. Gets his uncle to hold it. And it proceeds to, like, blare bright red. And, like, the dude makes this, like, such disgusted expression. And, like, throws it to the ground and whips out a gun. Okay, I'm currently at decision paralysis time and also massively hungry. And well past my usual stream time. So I'm going to raid on Demander Monster, who I mentioned earlier. She's an artist, but she's also playing Abiotic Factory, and it's actually a pretty fun game. So mad recommend. Mander Monster. So again, thank you for tuning in. I will probably be chilling out this week, trying to, like, work on some graphic design to beef up the stuff surrounding this server or this channel. So maybe things will be slightly different when I arrive next or the week after this. Maybe they won't be. Who's to say? It's all a work in progress. Anyways, thanks for the stream. I have been PaladinAshe, and I am signing off.